Please don't air any of this, Brad.
All right, we ready? You hitting it? Tell me when we're rolling. No, we've been rolling. God damn.
We're Googling over here.
All right.
To nerd sports now, people.
Exactly.
Look out. Do you fear death?
Oh, one of the greatest lines of all time.
I've got a job to it. I've got a job to it.
Kind of like whistles at her, so Dad looks over and the guy's going. And Dad's like, I got the fuck out of there. I was like, oh man, you didn't partake? I thought that was part of the mountain biking community, that y'all just went out there and had sex together in your tight shorts. But
Really making me 30 sides of red sauce. He just takes it back up.
So that's what I was doing wrong the first time.
That's what you were doing wrong.
Big Pharma's turning the frogs gay, and it's coming after your kids.
And they're going to make them incredibly happy.
Infowars.com.
Listened to so much. Are you...
Brad don't need anything.
Get him a koozie.
Oh, Brad does need a koozie.
You know what?
One of the
I
famous
only have
koozies.
one G1 koozie left.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be giving this to you, but I will. So, episode 44. You were on episode 13.
Really?
So it's been
Man, you have done a bunch. When was that?
been a few. I don't know.
I don't know
It would have been
either.
like in June. I think.
June? Okay.
But thank you for coming on.
Hey, you're
Again,
welcome. I'm glad to be here.
We got a special guest down the row here, Brad Melton. Hello, Brad.
Hey.
I think he's a little camera shy. It's
He's
his
camera
first
shy.
time.
Yeah.
But you got a book out.
Yeah, came out.
When you were on last time, you were still working on it.
Right, and I set a target date and I hit it.
Nice.
Yep.
I know you've been on the Coles. You've talked a little bit about it on there, but for people who haven't heard, just can you tell me like what inspired it, and then kind of how things went from there?
Sure, you may hold it up because
Yeah,
actually
dude,
this is yours.
get it up.
This
Is that
your
mine?
book. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
This is
that better
yours.
be signed.
It will be. It will
Okay.
be. I just grabbed it out of the.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So it's Firelight.
Firelight.
That is the main title, but the subtitle, which is really what the book's about, it is subtitled "Daily Reflections for Male Survivors of Sexual Abuse and Trauma." And so that's the full title. Firelight, the idea of it has come, the title really, it was Fireside originally, with the idea that most men who have had some trauma in their life keep a lot of that inside, but men and boys, but men really on sexual trauma, sexual things that happen in childhood, we really spend a lot of our life alone with that information and those secrets. And so that darkness that we keep inside us as a secret, I think really is very painful for us, for one. But it unfortunately also kind of has us walking around feeling very alone. And so bringing light to it, I actually a few years ago wrote a poem that's, it's not it's not necessarily in the same well, it's kind of deep, and so when I write a lot for myself, it's pretty deep. This book is not that way. This book is pretty easy, I believe, to read and communicate to a lot of people. But I wrote
what's the poem?
The poem. Well, it's just really a line from a poem that I wrote, but
Okay.
I put it in the book in the very beginning. And this was actually written in 2014. But
Okay.
it says, "Our eyes are unknowingly blind until we are awakened by darkness and open to see the fire before them." So the fire theme for me
So you've had that a minute.
has been a part of kind of a theme for me in my life. I have gone to a lot of campfires.
Yeah.
And sat around drinking for some time,
Sure.
playing games, and but then I also have some men's groups over the last 23 years since I've been sober. We go to we go to camps and different places like that. Also just by the fire, sitting and reflecting. So light on darkness has been important to me, and so anyway, that's the name of the book. The back of it says "Men Hurt," Men carry silent burdens. Men too have been sexually abused. That's the first line. All of those. It's 1 in 6 men are reported. We feel the weight of unspoken secrets from childhood. Our long agos and far aways are shadows we often walk with alone. We build walls and project unpossessed strength. We act and feel in ways that confuse and hurt us as well as those we love. We bury and bottle our past traumas. We try to cope in unhealthy and harmful ways. We survive, but we often do not thrive because we are not free from the scars and consequences of our childhood trauma. It is estimated that 1 in 6 men have experienced childhood sexual abuse. Most men never address its damage or impact. So those are some of the things on the back of the book. So I'm just, I tried to be very straightforward.
Could I see that?
Yeah. I very straightforward with the messaging of it. Obviously, I'm not a professional counselor. It didn't come from me doing therapy and being book knowledge information on the effects of childhood sexual trauma. It came from my own experience, which I didn't remember till I was 31 years old.
And you told a little bit of that story last time you were
Yeah.
here. That was very powerful.
So, yeah.
And there was another book that kind of did it kind of inspire because you.
Yeah, thanks for remembering that. That's the book the book that I found
Right.
while attending some of the meetings that I go to in a cabinet, and I really feel like honestly, I was meant to find that book for me to start with.
Sure.
That was in 2013, 14.
Okay.
It's a women's book
Right.
entitled Daybreak. Daily meditations for women survivors of sexual abuse. And
Right.
where I was, that book was kind of out of place, and the people there said, I don't know whose it is. It was brand new.
Yep.
It really didn't fit with the other books that were there.
Yeah.
And so, I gave them some, what I thought was a fair value for the book, 15, 16, I don't know what it was, $15, and put it in the cab of my truck. And I kept it there for probably a year or two. But every once in a while, I would pull it out and read it. Because I knew by this time, this was after I was 12, 13 years sober, and had done a lot of work. Daily reflection books, daily reading books have been a huge part of my life, even since high school, but especially since I got sober. So this book was added to all those. I just kept this one in the cab of my truck. Between building fences and painting and doing remodels and that sort of thing, I
Sure.
would pull that book out. But after a while, I started noticing, because I'd take notes in my phone,
Yeah.
for myself, and I've
Absolutely.
written poetry in it. I've written a lot of stuff. I've voice recorded things. And so I started doing that with that book. And then I took it into my house, and started journaling it and writing from time to time, maybe something I'd read or I'd reflect on what I'd read earlier. And so I started writing it, and after about a couple of years, I noticed that I had enough of those that I thought, I may be writing my own book. Because I already knew, I'd already looked for it. Google searched, there was no book like this for men, period. Right. And matter of fact, back then, there was hardly any books at all on male sexual abuse, male sexual trauma. Hardly any.
Right.
But especially one like this that was really not a professional's dive into what this is, a counselor's dive. It was from
Typically something we brag about.
No, it's not something we brag about at all. As a matter of fact, we rarely do men talk about it, but when you think about just the known statistics of 1 in 6 men have had in some way experienced some kind of sexual
And I think
trauma.
you were the one who told me that stat. I don't know if it was last time you were on, but I'd heard that. Might have been on Nicole's pod, but that sounds insanely high.
Yeah, there's
to me.
actually a organization called 1 in 6.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know if it came first or not, but I think I may have mentioned to Nicole, and I know there's an entry in there that talks about it, back in, I don't remember the date. It had to have been before 2012. I think it was 2010, and I was oddly home one day. I was living in shared housing with some other guys, which is part of what we do today for others.
Yeah. And a lot of people,
Other men.
if they haven't seen or heard you before, you started over from scratch.
Yeah, 2001, I was arrested for a sexual felony. I'd been drinking a lot, but only I started drinking again after I remembered my sexual abuse, which, is probably not uncommon, but it is just weird looking back on it that I remembered that at age 31. And my reaction to it, I guess, was just go buy more alcohol than I was used to buying, which included that on that trip, vodka, which never would I have bought vodka, but I just knew 80, 90, 100 proof cheap stuff would work for whatever I was trying to.
Get you there quick.
It got me there quick.
Well,
And
to change the way you feel. You were the first one that told me
yeah.
about that. I'd never really considered, you knew you were doing something, but it's 100% correct. You're changing the way you feel.
Right. Yeah, that's it. That was in 1991, 10 years later. So I drank for 10 years. In 2001, my drinking had really escalated, and but I was functional. I owned a real estate office. I was, being a husband and dad, not a very good one at all, but I was being that, and providing for my family and doing pretty well in business. But you would call me a functional alcoholic, drunk. But the sexual stuff from childhood began to creep back in, which ended up causing me to do harm in a way that caused a felony. And I was very guilty. And I'd been begging God, and even some friends, one friend in particular, helped me figure this out. But there was still parts of me that were in the dark. Like the light had not shone on my deepest, darkest place. And so therefore I wasn't free, and I was which, a lot of people do that. They'll tell enough or they'll dig enough out, but underneath it there is still a dark pain. And unfortunately, most men and women, but most of them just focus on men, don't feel that there's a safe place or a safe person to where they can really unpack that, where a space is held for them to feel safe, be honest, and then where do we go from here in a way that feels safe as well. And I never felt that till I was arrested.
Well, I
had no options.
Right, at that point.
This is it, man.
Because we're taught to be the strong ones, right?
Right.
Well, right. There's a taboo against men talking about feelings. I mean, even going back as far as I remember, my grandparents, it was just men didn't cry, men didn't talk about feelings. It was very taboo to talk about stuff like that, or even mental health.
Or even sinful, even.
Yes.
Sure.
Weak.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I think maybe in the last, I don't know, number of recent years, and maybe it's because of podcasts in one way, where men can get together and some kind of badass dudes get together and are just honest. See, that's what it is to me. Yeah. It's not about telling your secrets. It's like, can I be honest? And can I be honest in a way that is not doing harm to someone else or exposing other people, putting them on a spot where they become uncomfortable with the honesty? And so that's the line for me that I've become aware of in maturing in telling my story, because I have been telling it a little while verbally, and several years ago, someone said, "Whoa, way too much information, dude, like way too much information." And that was a lesson for me. And one of the things that I realized, that part of being the victim of abuse, having your boundaries crossed as a child, is that you can become a bucket with a lot of holes in it. Yeah. And so what you pour out a lot of stuff on people they're not ready for. Right. And so I try to really be careful with that, and that's part of what kind of held me back for a few years in writing and coming out with this message in this book. Was I just wasn't sure that my family, my kids, other people were quite ready for me to step out into the light.
Because you don't want to hurt them.
Yeah, you don't. And at a certain point, though, in the last year, what I realized was the time is coming for me to put my name on a book and to tell this. And I really felt like it would be this daily reflection piece where it's easy to read. It's not like you read a book. It's not me telling my story. I may eventually do that. I'm actually working on that in a different way. But this is hopefully helpful to both men, women, whether they had sexual trauma, abandonment trauma, physical, mental, emotional trauma. Trauma is trauma to some degree. And then each one of the types of different traumas of all kinds, even emotional abandonment and that sort of thing, they all have their impact on us, especially when it happened as children. But I think this will help with a lot of those.
Last time you talked a little bit about people who have that kind of trauma have a couple of different paths they can take. They either become, what were you telling me?
Well, typically and again, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist, I'm none of those things. I'm a guy who's a recovering alcoholic, a convicted felon from my behavior that was worthy of being a convicted felon. I've been off those papers for a long time.
You're not a book learner. You've lived it.
Well, no, I've lived it. I've done both, but mostly I've lived it. Yes, you're right. The two paths.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in treatment back in 2001, I was there for 3 months in Texas, and I went there knowing that I was facing charges. But I really had been begging for help. I'd been begging God for help for a very long time with these things that I was dealing with and these actions and stuff. And I just I could never get free of them. And so when I went to treatment, I went with the mindset as I really, 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 really want help. And I want to do whatever it takes to figure this out. So it was about 3 weeks into the treatment center where I lived that I heard the idea of what I shared with you about I drank to change the way I felt. And I was going, well, that's me. That if that's what qualifies for me to be an alcoholic, then I am that.
Right.
Because I knew there was something wrong with me. I mean, I knew for a very long time, even though I presented well.
Right.
I mean, really presented well.
Yeah.
You know, it was pretty successful, and people would never have thought this, pretty shocking, that sort of thing. But inside me, I knew I felt very wrong.
Right.
And it wasn't like I didn't have a spiritual faith or Christian faith, you know, something that I truly deeply believed in, but I could never get free. And all the methodologies that I never resisted any methodology in a spiritual religious path. I pursued them to try to get me help and to be at peace with myself and to grow my relationship with God in a way that I felt was like, this is going to help me and help other people. I didn't want heaven. I wanted to escape from hell, my internal hell. I mean, that's what I wanted.
Yeah,
and I
powerful.
never could find that relief
Yeah.
Man,
until I
that's a
hit the
t-shirt
bottom.
right there.
Thankfully,
What's
we
that?
know-
I didn't want heaven. I just wanted to escape from
And it's really true. I mean, I suffered. Then there's you know, and I'm not trying to promote an organization, but there's 12 steps organizations that have material that I've seen and followed for a long time, but the relief, there are spiritual principles and practices that come from 12-step work, that growing up in church, two master's degrees in theology, religious education, being fully in embracing my faith for years, I just never found a solution that worked. And I now have that, but the big thing was having other men that helped me walk through those steps, being willing to be completely honest and and honestly, it was forced upon me. In 2000, I was arrested.
Okay.
Yeah.
the change was forced.
The change was forced. But what I realized was that as soon as I started telling the truth to someone in authority, my attorney told me to literally quote, "Shut the fuck up. You're talking too much."
Yeah.
But I was getting so much relief from the suffering of what I had carried for so long that it felt like a freedom that I'd never experienced, even though I was facing potentially
Sure.
jail time, which I never did go to prison, but I could have. I think the fact that I went to treatment embraced my own path toward becoming a better man, to put it simple, and to never do that harm again. I embraced that, went to treatment, paid for that, came back. So they didn't send me to prison, where I probably would not have got the same kind of help that I got when I got back here.
Did the treatment itself help, or was it something in you, or was it a combination of both? You accepting?
I had a willingness and desire
Yeah.
to figure this thing out.
Yeah. Because if you don't want help, you can't be helped.
Yeah,
No
and I was
matter
willing.
what.
Man, I'm telling you, I was willing to do anything. I really
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
I mean, my insurance didn't pay for it. Today, insurance pays for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I was blessed that year, like really blessed financially, in the sense that I had enough money to pay for it. And then I came home on September 9th, 2001. So 2 days later was 9/11, and my mom calls and says, "Take all your money out of the bank. Take all your money out of the bank." And I'm like, "Mom, I got $34 left." Literally.
Right.
And I'm sleeping in my office. I got nothing. But yeah, I was begging for a solution to these problems that I had. It wasn't just the drinking, because I drank, but that wasn't my deeper problem. My deeper problem was that I was tormented on the inside, and the drinking helped calm that and
Yes.
soothe that.
Yes.
And and the torment for me was not just remembrances and memories from childhood. Matter of fact, at age 31, when I remembered it, it was only for a few minutes. Drove to the liquor store, next 10 years
and
I drank.
knocked it back.
Then while in treatment, I did work with therapists
Right.
and group, and that really helped me understand it. And what underlying all that was the shame and so this is where the book, I think, comes in. Firelight began to bring to light the shame, how you can get rewired from a good path of your best self. You can get rewired when things happen to you, and you get off track, and yet you always wanting to get back to who you were, but you just can't ever get back there. You just can't get back there. Life goes on. You mature. You go to school. You do your thing, but you still feel like you're off track, and you go off track, and then you get back on. You follow the path. And so they helped me understand that I was going to have to do some work, emotional, mental, spiritual work over a long period of time to get back to the path where I could become my better self.
You got to do the demolition before you can rebuild.
That's right. Deconstruct before you reconstruct. Yeah.
But you were talking about survivors of trauma.
Yeah, so there's two paths. Yeah, the two paths. So typically when you're either going to remain, you're victimized is what's happened. You've been perpetrated upon. You become a victim.
Right.
And I never identified as a victim.
Yep.
Part of so what happened to me.
What do you mean by that? I've never idea.
Well, for me, someone
but before you answer that, you either become a victim
or a perpetrator,
or yourself,
or both. But you'll either stay on the victim side, and you'll basically live your life attracting people who will take advantage of you and victimize you.
Right.
And that becomes your primary
Sure.
kind of path. Unfortunately, though, that there are many, hopefully not near as many, as the potential is with 1 in 6. So that you become a perpetrator yourself, which for me, the events that I remembered that happened when I was age 6 to 9, part of that was someone not only perpetrating upon me, but they invited me, taught me, directed me, coerced me into perpetrating upon others. And so when you're 6 to 9 years old and that's your wiring, you always involve other people. I have friends who, we're talking about sexual things. I mean, a lot of their, what I'm going to call sexual struggles. Let's just use pornography, for example. There are some who spend a lot of time, money, energy on pornography and cannot shake it. Like they'll spend hours with it, and they don't want to do that, and they can't break that. they're caught in that loop, but they're not doing a necessarily direct harm. I mean, you can get into that, and a lot of people I know get in prison for that kind of thing with that, because you step across some boundaries with that,
Yeah, absolutely.
illegal stuff, but which is very dangerous, But
you never identified as a victim.
I didn't, even though I was right.
Sure.
But what I identified with, and what caused me so much shame, is that I continued to act out the victimizer, the perpetrator, in childlike ways. But as I got older and you become an adult, you can get away from it, which I did from age 17 to 36. But the last 3 years of my drinking career, in my midlife, my primary thing was that as far as that goes, I became the perpetrator.
But I think also those who become victims, because I thought a lot about this after you were on last time. If you identify as the victim, that in itself can be crippling.
Right.
Right.
It can.
Because you're always focused on the wrongs that are done to you, and I think people can get into a trap of going through life that way.
Right.
And really, like you said, part of your identity becomes a victim.
And then you attract that.
Sure.
And you attract it, and
Sure.
your whole kind of psyche is built around that. And I just believe that you focus your thinking on those kinds of things, not the really horrible things, but even just like, I don't want to, I'm just making this up. You get a paper cut, and it's truly like someone else's fault because you got a paper cut, open up a letter.
Yep.
Or you get a flat tire, and it's not your fault. It's it's
always blame.
It's blaming others.
Always,
right,
yeah.
Right.
And it's a
that.
very sad way of life. I know people like that, and it's crippling to them.
Right.
They can never grow in any way because it's always, and they never look inward and say, what can I change? What can I do? Because you said there's a lot of work that goes into this.
It was for me. I don't necessarily think that everybody has to do the work, but
I
for
would
me.
argue that you have to.
Well,
to get better.
I do. I think you have to embrace the opportunities for growth. Just like this guy that called me today, he is trying. He's really trying, and he's made progress. But
Yeah.
in the middle of a day where it's pouring down rain, he had plans for the day to spend time with someone he loved, and he was working his ass off and finished that, got a paycheck, and on the way to that place, he has a flat tire, second flat tire in a couple of weeks. Got his first paycheck, good paycheck on a job, and here he is. But he calls me and just says, it just sucks. I just need somebody to talk to about this. And I said, do you want me to listen, or do you want me to give a response? And he goes, I don't know. I just needed to tell somebody. And so I don't know that that's how he is. I don't know if he's victim mindset or not. I know could be. And if so, he'll need to work to break that, or the pattern will continue. Just like being a perpetrator, the pattern could continue. So, but those are the two paths. And again, I don't want to make it too simple, but they're pretty strong evidence. So I had a very hard time even in writing this book, because I identified, when you're a convicted felon, you're on the registry for years, even living in the same, even though I lived in the same town, and I chose to stay here for different reasons. You have a very hard time not identifying as the person that is that, the offender. And that was another thing, that even though I was writing this and journaling these things, it helped me kind of break the feeling of that's all that I am, is that.
Right.
And then I'll never be someone who could embrace the fact that, I too am a victim. And I had people, not many to be honest, but a couple key people in my life early on who really did not care at all whether about what happened to me as a child. I didn't even feel comfortable telling them that's a part of my life story, because it just hurt so bad for me, to be honest. It hurt so bad for me to try to identify as a victim, as a male, as a man, as a victim, because of the stereotype, maybe of this, just the psyche of the male. I don't know.
Sure.
But also, it felt to me like I'm using that as an excuse for the things that I ended up doing, and I really had to work, I think, several years on, and I think journaling this really helped me because I kept seeing over and over again, I truly am in many ways the way that I am today because of some of the things that happened to me in my life.
Certainly.
We all are.
We all are, but for me, it was very hard to embrace that. And I think a lot of men at their deepest place, because they don't go there, that door's shut for them. It's like, I'm not going there. I have there's a man in my life who has played a significant role. I'm not close to him today, but I had a conversation with him a couple of years ago on his behalf, and just asked him, would you be willing to take a little deeper dive into your relationship with your father? And he said, I absolutely will not go there. Well, what I knew then was he lacked the willingness to do what it would take for him to do the work at that point. And I didn't blame him for it. I just knew that he was done.
Yeah, he's hurt.
He was done, and that father hurt wound. And I'll tell you, man, it is so prevalent. Now, it may just have to do with the fact that, you know, Lisa and I, we're doing shared housing now for for men in recovery, and you know, I have to be careful about what I say about that. But I can just tell you, the father wound, the mother wound, the traumas of childhood.
Amen.
There's not anybody in our houses who don't have it.
Yes.
Not one. And in some way. And some of them haven't even touched on it. Some of them talk about it pretty openly, which is good for them. But anyway, I really believe that this book can put in the hands of men, family members of people. It's not necessarily a book that men are just going to go buy. They might. I don't know if they'd pull it off the shelf and walk. I don't know that they'd buy it.
Where can I go buy that book?
You can buy it on Amazon and just have it privately sent to you. I don't think that it's a book that you would walk in Barnes & Noble, pull it off the shelf. Even for me, and I've been doing this work a long time, it's hard to pick up a book about male survivors of sexual abuse and walk up and hand it to somebody and say, I want to buy this book. It's just, there's a barrier there that's hard, even when you've pushed through some of those barriers like I have. I do believe that if a person bought this book off of Barnes & Noble, probably 75% of them will be buying it because they need to buy it for somebody else. Yeah. And actually, I would say most of the books that I've sold, which hadn't been that many, people bought them for somebody else.
Well, it just came out, right? When did it?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow. So you had the Daybreak book.
Yeah,
you're
Daybreak.
kind of reading that, you realize, hey,
book.
there's not really anything equivalent for men. So
Right.
you kind of start journaling. When did you decide, hey, I'm gonna really do this and make this a book? Like, what was the impetus there?
Well, probably about 2016.
So it's been percolating a while.
It's been percolating. So I found Daybreak, written by Maureen Brady, and I acknowledge her in this book.
Awesome.
And she's written some other books as well, but.
Have you?
And I think that book
was.
was written like 96 or 98.
Have you reached out to her?
No.
She might be interested.
She
to know
might.
that she inspired.
Yeah. And I think probably that could happen. And I would be glad to.
I'll tell you a funny story. When Walter was little, there was this book called The Monster Who Ate Darkness. And the kid was afraid of the dark, right? This monster would come and eat it. Anyway, I wrote a song, a lullaby for him, kind of based on that book. Anyway, so I sent it to the author of the book. I said, hey, I was really inspired by this. And it turns out she was deaf. So she couldn't, not only could she not hear the song, but she asked if I could send her the lyrics, and I did. And then she redlined it and corrected some of the grammar in it.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that wild? I was like, well, songwriting is not exactly
That's not exactly inspiring me to send Miss Brady a deal. Wow, maybe you should sing that for us. Can you remember?
I'll show it to you. It's a good song. I loved it. Sang it to him when he went to bed at night. But anyway, so you're kind of journaling through? Like,
I
as
was
you're-
doing it for myself.
right,
Because
just for yourself.
my practice in my recovery life
Yeah,
has become more consistent, but it wasn't like I got sober, went treatment center, and then started like getting up in the morning. I've done that. I've sought a relationship with the God of my understanding
yeah,
since I was very young, and have a very strong sensitivity to that. I love it. At times I was ashamed within the middle of it, but I enjoy to this day a deep relationship with what I consider God.
right.
And
Now, what is your relationship with the church?
oh, that's a different topic. Let me finish this other one.
Yeah,
and come
yeah,
back.
sure.
So in my daily routine, which I built then around recovery material for years, I added this book by Miss Brady for women. And when I brought it into the house and I said, okay, I'm going to read this now on a daily, that's when I started like I was like, wow, I can rewrite this in my own words.
Or based on some of your own experiences?
From my
Was
own
that-
experience,
yeah.
in my own words, with the different examples and that sort of thing. And that was about 2016. And also about that time, I was single again for the second time after being married twice and divorced twice. Was in a really short, somewhat short, very unhealthy relationship with someone. And a couple of accountability men in my life really helped me get through that and helped me break free from it. But it was also during the very end of that relationship where I had some flashbacks about being abused as a boy.
Really?
Yes, during sexual encounter with this person. And it was another throwback. It was like being like the time I was on the golf course
Right,
at age 31, and here I am now at age 50.
right.
And in a sexual encounter with this person, I felt like I was back in that tent back when I was 6 years old
Really?
again. Yeah, with a woman.
That
In this
powerful.
yeah, it was that powerful. And
Man.
and that was the end, like immediate end of that relationship for me. But I'm 50 years old and I'm like, holy shit, I am still really dealing with this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I dug in even deeper and wrote some more. And then had a friend that I took my handwritten notes and said, would you please see if you can decipher these, see if you can kind of edit them. And
Is
see
that
if
the other name on the book?
No.
Or is this somebody
That's that's just a friend. That's
Okay.
a friend.
Okay.
And she needed work. She needed to make some money. I knew she was pretty good with words. And I just said, would you be willing to edit this? It is my story. If you're willing to take on this stuff about sexual trauma.
Yeah.
And she did. And she helped me. She edited it, gave it back to me. And at that point, it was like 80 to 100 pages. Yeah. Well, if you're going to do a daily meditation book, you need 365 entries.
Yeah.
So I was far from that.
Sure.
And then
But it's
about
still something you're working.
oh yeah, I was
into
working. And I
and-
thought, you
yeah.
know, someday maybe I
Yeah.
could make this book. I kept looking for someone else to do it. Honestly, I just
Yes.
thought it's going to happen. Somebody's going to write
Somebody
that.
will help
Somebody's
me.
going to write that song.
Yeah,
You know, it
somebody's
won't be
gonna do
me.
it.
It's my idea, but somebody
Oh,
else is
yes.
going to do it.
No stranger to
And
that.
I was like, that's fine with me if they do. I mean,
Right.
if somebody else writes this book, write it, man. Get it out there, you know. But time would go on. Then I met Lisa, my beautiful, wonderful, awesome, fabulous wife, a gift from God that I prayed for. Like I need a warrior princess to walk beside me, and she has been that very much so. But and she's encouraged me to write the book. Financially, because of her business, our business together, it put me into a time freedom that allowed me to spend time writing. And so the last 2 or 3 years, I've had money to kind of really hire a coach to help me write another book, which is really my story. Put this on the shelf, but continue to write it. Then about 6 months ago, when we started doing the housing, I'll tell you what really triggered it. And I may get emotional. I'm just setting you up, warning you.
Feel free, brother. Among friends here.
Yeah. When we created our nonprofit for men, for housing, and I began to interview the men and bring them in, every one of them hardcore addict, alcoholics. Grown men, youngest 32, oldest 62. Every one of them had some kinds of trauma from childhood, and I'm like, damn it, I got to get this book written for these guys. For me, I got to get it done. And so the impetus to finish has been in the last 6 months.
Okay.
Other men.
So you had a calling, like a.
Yeah.
I need to get this done.
Yeah, I need to get it done. And what's cool is these books came in yesterday because I got you can order them indivially on Amazon.
Well, you were missing a date, weren't you?
Yeah,
On
the first one I was
batch?
missing a date, August 11th. I missed it.
August
I took
11th, yeah.
But I ordered a box of these, and they
Yeah.
came in yesterday, and I was able today. One of the guys that's been with us about a month, who I love, he came out of one of our houses, and I had this box of books in the front seat, and he looked through the window, and he was like, "Is that mine? Is that mine? Is that mine?" And I said, "I got a copy for the house. We're gonna have a house copy before we just give individual ones."
Right.
But that was I was there for other things, and so I really didn't, until this very moment, didn't really realize how emotional that was. So anyway, this is sitting on the desk at one of the houses, and but that's what got it done. Then, like, driving force, and then I set July 31st as the date
Now
to get that done.
You self-published.
Yeah, on
And
Amazon.
That's not easy either, because and I've seen some of your posts about, like, you've got to get basically all the pages laid out in there. Did you use Amazon software to do that?
Yeah, they have a back office. The easiest part, actually, crazy at the end, was actually getting it like loaded in and published. And I'm not Mr. Computer Guy at all.
Right.
But the back office through KDP Self Publishing, you can go in, you can save. I mean, it's step by step.
Yep.
The hardest part was just making sure all the pages lined up when
Yeah.
there's like 380 something total.
Yeah.
So you don't miss August 11th, which I did.
Right.
But yeah, so that just so July 31st is, I have a daughter whose birthday is that day. I have a brother whose birthday is that day. My wife's sister's birthday is that day.
Wow.
A couple other things. So I really set July 31st as the date to finish the work. Like, last edit done.
Right.
I'm lock and load. And then I set, then I thought, well, now I can publish it. I hope to get that done pretty quick. And as I was going through the back office stuff in the 1st of August, I was like, this is going pretty fast. Like, this
Yeah.
is working out pretty good. And then I thought, maybe I can publish this by the 8th, which is my other sister's birthday.
Yeah.
And that's also the anniversary of my father's passing. So I was like, okay, the July 31st date was sentimental, so let's go ahead and lock it in for my sister's birthday.
What, on August 8th? In
yeah.
a week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I actually got it loaded in on August the 6th, which was crazy. And I was like, wow, that happened fast, because I just was pushing the buttons, loading things in, and it said, you're ready to review your book and then publish it. So I reviewed, and pretty early morning, Tuesday morning, August 6th, it was like, okay, I think it's ready. I mean, it looks like it is.
Yeah.
And I pushed the publish button, and it's like, complete. Well, then they said, within 72 hours or so, your book will be available on Amazon. And I got a text on August the 8th, about 8 o'clock, from a good friend of mine, singer-songwriter,
Yeah.
Justin Brasher. I don't know if you know Justin. He said, hey, man, just want to let you know I just bought your book for a friend of mine, a former
That's
coworker,
cool.
who I think would benefit from it. And I'm going, well, that's nice, Justin. Thank you. And then it registers. Wait, he said he just bought my book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that must mean it's available. So I go to
Yeah.
Amazon, and sure enough, there it sat. There it was. So I was pretty excited.
Hey.
So that was August
Is it
8th.
exclusively on Amazon?
Yeah.
Is that okay? So they can go to Amazon and get it. Obviously
Yeah.
called Firelight.
Yeah.
What is today?
I
Today's
bought mine.
Did you
August-
buy one?
In fact, you inspired me. I just bought a second one, and I'm going to give it back to you because I want you to give it to somebody.
Okay.
wow.
Would
Well,
you
I'm
do that for
honored
me?
to. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do I get to go to Hawaii to deliver it? Just local? Okay. I would love to. I would love
That'd be
to.
local.
And I
Yeah, that'd be
also,
fun.
And I'm gonna deliver it to you personally because I really want to learn about your housing ministry
Okay.
you got going.
Okay. Well, I think that this connection, Brad texted me today and said, hey, a good friend of mine's going to be here. I hope you're okay with it. He's kind of listened to your stuff, and I'm honored. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
I'm really
That's
glad
awesome,
you're here.
man. People, the coolest thing about the podcast for me has been, I wouldn't have met Brad. I wouldn't have met you.
Yeah.
You know, so many cool people in my life that are on that frequency, you know,
Yeah.
that you just know, hey, we might disagree on a thing here or there, but these are my people,
Right.
you know. And Nicole was the impetus for me starting my pod. You were kind of the impetus for her starting hers. Now you've got your own book out,
Yeah.
you know. What was it like when you first got, have you ever done anything like this before?
No.
So when you got that first copy, how did that feel? Because I've been through it, you know, with my
Well,
first
Lisa
album that I
ordered
got.
it as soon as we could. As soon as we found out about it, Lisa ordered it on Amazon, and
Yeah.
and I was probably, well, I was relieved. I actually walked around for a few days because just like, wow, I can't believe it's done. I
Yeah.
can't believe it's done. Like,
Yeah.
I've done it. I mean, it's done. It's like a weight was lifted off of me. Literally, I felt like a physical weight was lifted
Yeah,
off.
I'm sure.
Because one, I'd carried it for a while. Two, I had stepped out and I'd been like, okay, I mean, we can like publish it and not tell anybody,
No.
but that's not the intent.
No, you want to get that out there.
Get it out there because of the nature of the book. I really do
Yeah.
believe that, my whole intent is I want men to know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And not just the message of you're not alone, but here I want you to identify. I want you to identify with the things you've been feeling that you can't put into words or that you have day after day, or at least a few times a month. You can read something that you go, okay, that helps me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have an answer for this 6 months ago or
Sure.
25 years ago, whatever that is. And so,
Yeah.
I do believe that has that. And so I was relieved and excited. It's kind of surreal. I'm not a private person. I'm pretty public. I mean, if I don't go to Briar Rose Coffee Shop or Starbucks or be in public, just loving people and being loved on by people. If I go too many days, I get cranky. But I also like to go to solitude. I really love solitude. I like to go be quiet for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
So I like being out there with my deeper things now. And that's who I am. And so I think that in a way, again, I really don't. I don't know that there's a book for men other than this one, like this one, anywhere in the world. And so when you say something like that, the potential for what it could do, like really impact a lot of lives. I'm hoping that it does. If it gets men journaling their own stuff, talking, creating conversations like this right here, and your friend
Yeah,
that you're going to have bring it to me for a reason that you have. That's what and so when I knew that happened, and Lisa ordered the book, and she's so awesome. She ordered it immediately, and my mom ordered 4, and then my sister ordered 4, and they've all given some away. Everybody bought them to give them away.
Yeah.
And of course, we kept the original because it's there's 25 of them that didn't make the second. They were sold before the first edit. And that's the other thing about Amazon. You can go in and edit. So this is actually an edited version, but it's not perfect because I found some more. Typos and missed words, and I don't think I missed any pages yet.
Would you mind? So today's August 31st. Would you mind doing a reading?
I'll read 31st. Yeah.
Just get a little sample.
Let's see. What is today? August 31st. What's today's reading? Serenity is the name of today's reading. Today I'm ready to let go of the past and embrace the gift of the present moment. I'm weary of dwelling on the past, filtering so many experiences through the warped lens of my childhood trauma. It's exhausting clinging to distorted truths and perpetuating the same painful patterns. While the urge to break free is strong, I know I can't do it alone. I believe a higher power can begin to restore my sanity and can help me shed the shackles of my past. I seek God's guidance to find the truth of my present reality. there really is a present reality that has its roots in the present moment without the bindings of the past. It feels strange to silence the movie reel of my past, leaving only a quiet in its wake. But I'm learning to sit comfortably with the stillness. Gradually, the present moment comes into focus. It's enough. There's peace in simply being. There is serenity in the silence. So that's today's reading. And then I want to read, here's another piece, because tomorrow will be September 1st. So what I did at the beginning of each month is I took a poem or something from someone or even my own and had that as an introductory page. But I also, at the beginning of each month, have a statement that I think is important, and it's not mine. I adopted it from Survivors of Incest Anonymous.
Okay.
Which there is an organization called Survivors of Incest Anonymous. I didn't know that until I found this other book. But like tomorrow, the month of September will begin for anyone who reads, and it's a poem from Rumi. And it's this: come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Come yet again, come, come. And I had broken my vow to God so many times, and to myself, because it was between me and God from the time I was 6 till the time I was like 31 and then 39. And I broke those. I just could never shake it. So anyway, it's those kinds of things that just are meaningful to me that hopefully will be meaningful to others.
Did you find it challenging to write this, or was it pretty easy?
It was not easy.
No, not easy. So it was work.
It at times it was easy because I was just doing it for me. And then when I realized that I'm transitioning now to potentially take my writings and convert it into writings that would be palatable for others.
You had to change your writing style. You talked about this on the Coles a little bit.
Yeah, I had to change my style.
Make it more accessible.
Yep. Yeah. And not repeating the same things. I had to expand it, and I had to go in and I had to look at these books that I had been reading for years and going, what did they do? What did they do? Well, they covered a lot of topics. They didn't stay stuck on just like, if it was a book on alcoholism, it wasn't just that.
Right.
Yeah. And so with that, I had to really see what I could do to be both creative and not too creative, because my writing, if you just took some of my old stuff that's in my files and on my phone and that sort of stuff that is just poetry and stuff, people go, that's cool, but I don't understand it. It's really deep shit, and I'm like, okay, but it's not palatable. Or Martha Senvin's another person who really helped me as a coach, and I recognize her in here, and her and I met, and I paid for her services to help me write another book before I finished this one, and it's still in the works, but
no, that one's more of a narrative.
It's more of a teaching book. It's From Nowhere to Now Here. It's the subtitle of that, if I keep it, this is learning to love and leverage the times in life you don't know what the fuck to do.
That's
the subtitle.
I like it.
That's learning to love and leverage those times in life where you're stuck and you do not know what to do.
Yeah, and I think everybody
you're
can
stuck
relate
in
to
that from nowhere to now here phase, and it's okay to be in there. That's a liminal space.
That's when we're dependent on help.
That's when we need help. That's when we're dependent upon help, and we can reach out for it, or we just sit in it, and it's okay. It's okay. But I wanted to title the book like Liminal Spaces. Well, nobody knows what liminal spaces are. So I'm like, that's what I mean by how I get into the deeper stuff. Nobody's going to buy and read that. That's just you talking now.
Right.
So it was hard. And many times when I was trying to hammer this out and get it done, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I'm sure every author, every songwriter, trying to produce something to get it out there gets to that space where, like, I can't do anymore. But the topic here was like, this is heavy stuff. I mean, it's just, fortunately, I've done a lot of it. Anyway. Man, the podcast is great, Brad, but I feel like I don't mind continuing talking about me, but I get kind of self-conscious about just talking about me.
Well, I see so much potential in this beyond just the tough subject. And the fact that this is such a tough subject, I think there's incredible potential for a lot of guys to read this and whatever I got going on in my life, this is how I can navigate it.
Yeah.
And I can sort of
What do you mean by that when you say journaling, or what's in the actual material itself?
What's in the book, and
Yeah.
just giving us some examples that worked for you, and just to be open with other guys on whatever crazy subject we got.
I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome that you brought that up, and that's exactly what you said, because Brad's doing it.
Yeah, he is.
Brad's doing it on his podcast. And the fact that the fact that you're sitting here,
Yeah.
he introduced us. And this is a major point in my book.
Yeah.
Is, guys, we cannot do this alone. We live separate lives, and all our lives. I mean, the way the world's operated. We are separated not only by space and time and busyness, but even when we're together, 90% of the time we're staring at this damn thing.
Yeah.
And we've got something else going on.
Yeah.
And
I was buying books. I just wanted.
no. I'm just saying. And I appreciate that. But even that separates us even more. But a podcast like Brad's pulls men and women, but it gives men a space.
Yeah.
So HELD, HELD, is the name of our housing initiative, HELD Housing Initiative.
Yeah.
But we also I have a small business LLC called HELD Ventures, HELD Ventures, HELD. Well, that word held could have many, if you look it up, has many definitions. Held, hold has many definitions. But actually, HELD is the initials Harold, Elgin, Lisa, Doris. That's Hal and Lisa. But one of the things that I often think about is I want, and Lisa wants, to hold a space that is safe for men or women, for her, because she has a ministry that she does called Flourish, and she did it long before we met, for women. We call it ministry. It is that, but it's not officially that. Where we hold space and for people to speak their truth, tell their truth, or feel safe to come together and do things. Your podcast does that, and
Absolutely.
so I'm honored to be here with you, because I think whether knowingly or unknowingly or whatever, you're doing something that I hope is emulated by others, and others around the country see it and do it and grow.
Yeah, it's been a while. You mentioned that last time you were on about how it was a space for guys to have a voice and talk, and I didn't really think much of it. I'm just trying to have a good time. I just want to capture my friends on record and all that.
Yeah.
And then I got to thinking about it, and there's been some moments on the pod where I don't know how else those things could have happened had you not had a podcast.
Right.
And it's as simple as, like, how do you just get to sit down with somebody for 2 hours, in real life?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're always seeing your friends at get-togethers or parties or something, and you get these little bite-sized
You
conversations.
create a safe, welcoming space. I told you the very first one that I saw of yours is like, man, you got skills, dude.
I don't know about all that, but I have found one of these things to me, and we talked about
unconscious competent.
the taboo of men talking about their feelings. I've run into this. People don't want to hear it, and it's one of those things that our grandparents grew up in a much tougher time than our parents did.
We are bred to be self-sufficient.
Yes. But I feel like in this day and age, there's not a need for the alpha male, for the man, right?
There's not one?
Well, I feel like society has said that there's not really a need.
Oh.
It's like back in the day, the man was the hunter and the protector and the builder, and we've gotten into such a comfortable lifestyle where it's like, what advantages does the man really have? And they've kind of been, in my opinion, kind of sidelined. So we don't really need
It's
that.
human nature. Pick a topic all throughout history.
Sure.
All the topics we got going on today, we go ditch to ditch.
Yeah,
We never put the needle naturally where it needs to land.
I agree.
And I think that's where our Creator wants us to land. It's somewhere in the middle, and let Him guide us to where that middle's going to be.
Sure. So we haven't had a chance to talk a lot about spirituality, and we'll get into it later. But like I was asking you earlier about the church.
Yeah.
You know, what is because you define God in a way that I really like, the God of my understanding.
Well, those are, that's...
Because I think a lot of people have God as this image in this little box, and this is what God is, and it's this real simple thing, when in reality, we can't even conceive of what that is. So what is your experience?
How arrogant is it for us to try to define Him?
Oh, absolutely.
So freaking arrogant of us.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, you take AI, for instance. Like, we can't even comprehend what AI is capable of and doing, and how much weaker than God is AI. Right. So that kind of put it in perspective for me a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've never thought of that.
You know, how much more powerful
right.
is that? But what has your relationship with the church been like, and where is that now? Because I know you've been going up to James's church some.
I've gone once at James's invitation. Of course, I've known a lot of the leadership of that particular church since I was in college, which is in the 80s. And
but having been a preacher for a long time.
Well, I was for a long time ago. I was for a short time.
Okay, there we go.
Time long ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3 years
Far,
back.
far away.
88 to 91.
But you had that relationship at one
Yeah.
point in time.
Yeah. Yes.
So where are you now with the church as a whole? What
Still
is that
trying to
relationship?
figure it out. Honestly, I love the church. I love the fact that there are people who find their relationship with God through church.
Mm-hmm.
It is imperfect.
Yeah.
Every church is imperfect. Every faith system, I think, is imperfect because it's filled with imperfect people.
Sure.
But I embrace imperfection. I think there's a deep spirituality in embracing our imperfection, and I don't mean Calvinistic theology that makes all of us sinners from birth, and that
Right.
I mean that. Which I can talk that if anybody wants to. I don't really care to. It's a waste. To me, it's a waste of time.
You do have a theology degree, though, right?
I have two.
Two,
Yes.
okay.
And I'm a student of of these things, and people at times I feel friends, people I love, and people who love me want to argue a point, and I just don't have time for it.
Yeah.
I let other people do that. I don't need to do that. I don't want to do that, and if I feel like that's what's going on, I just like, let y'all do that. I'm not doing that. So
Right.
that oftentimes is what I feel about with church, is there is their form of their message that they are very set on, and
Right.
and honestly, I do believe it is as genuine. I don't have a dark mindset about it being some horrible thing. I appreciate it. I'm glad that we all have our path. Someone recently, I heard a mother of an addict say in a meeting, allowing people to find their own path is sacred. Mm-hmm. And when she said that, I thought, wow, I think that's kind of my basic belief, is that I don't want to get in the way of anyone in their spiritual growth. I don't want to get in my own way of my spiritual growth. And the law of love overcomes that. If I will love people with the love of God, then I will not put my beliefs or my way in front of their path of spiritual growth or my own.
Sure.
And so that's where I'm at. And these are not thoughts that came from Hal Henson alone. These are thoughts that have been ingrained into me now through Scripture, through childhood Baptist church, through seminary, through being a person who's going to seminary, being a preacher, carrying a burden of secrets from my childhood that when I told my first wife about things from my childhood, it was such a bomb to her that it really was devastating.
Is it after you were married?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was after, and
what? Give us a year. When would this have been?
this was in. So I pastored a church in Farmington from 1988 to 1991, and toward the end of that time, there was an event at the church where a lot of young people were coming, and we had an outside evangelist come in, which is what you do in Baptist churches, and especially if they're young and fiery and they get a lot of attention. And it got the coaches and the athletic department pissed off at me because the kids were wanting to come to our church and not go to the ball games. I mean, there was a deal that happened in 1990, 91. Yeah. They were really pissed at me. So I've had conflicts with that. But anyway, there was a young girl who her grandfather had been abusing her, and she shared that with some of the women, and the women called me as the pastor into that setting with them, and I couldn't handle it, and I couldn't explain. I mean, it's like I just couldn't handle it, and I just had to walk away from it. And I've reached out to that person in recent years, and she actually probably will hear this. She lives in a whole other state, but I couldn't handle it, and so when I shared it with this evangelist, and in that moment, he's the only person I even came close to sharing my whole truth with, and I just bawled. But I shared it with my wife, and that really, it just really shut things down. Tried to go to some Christian counselors. That's all we knew to do. And
shut things down because
in
she
my
wasn't
relationship
able
with
to
her,
accept what had transpired.
And that's not her fault. It's really not her fault.
Yeah. Is that a societal taboo that she was clinging to? Or
I don't know that. I don't know there's any way to describe for her.
You're different.
She's
than
wounded.
The man she married. You became,
all of a sudden I was not that guy, and that's part of it. Yeah. But the point I want to make about it is that the church's solution was not to talk about it,
right?
Or to pray about it one more time, and at the end of the prayer we would, Jesus has done it, taken care of it. You're good to go. Sure. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I've done this before.
Send me your hopes and prayers, baby.
I'm like, I've done this before, so many times, and so.
Yeah.
Then when I got sober, to answer your question, I get sober in 2001, and two things happened. One, I was a convicted felon with a very ugly felony crime that put me in a position to have to disclose who I am to the public.
Sure.
So in doing that, I was not welcome in churches. People say, "Oh, bull crap," and I said, "No, it's true." Absolutely, especially in 01. But the second thing that happened that put me in opposition with the church is that I had sought that over and over and over again. I don't know that anyone could have been more seeking than me. But it wasn't until I got into the 12-step programs where they said, "Find the God of your own understanding," and I found a solution for the suffering that I had poured alcohol and sex on for years. I'm going to say that again. It wasn't until I embraced the spiritual path of being honest and of working with other men and telling my truth and diving deep and digging deep and doing the work that is required for you to go through these steps that the church never provided us. They were there, but you were on your own to find them.
Sure.
Sitting in a pew listening to a preacher, and I was the preacher for a while. You're not in a position to call it discipleship, but even that, it still ends up being like other things. And it wasn't until I did the step work with other men who'd walked this path to help me do the inventory and to share it with not only God but also another man, and then to do then amends, like amend this. How do you amend it without doing harm? How do you change this? And then how do you practice your spiritual life on a daily basis where you do an inventory? Was I selfish today? Was I dishonest today? Was I afraid today? Did I do harm today? And what did I do good today? And you do that as a part of your spiritual principles and practices. It wasn't until I found that outside the church and outside of what was in the scripture and being taught that I could say, that's who I am today. But when the church then wants me to come in and deliver their message of Jesus died on the cross for you, and and I don't want to make small of that. I really don't, because I believe that sacrifice is an eternal gift of love, offering forgiveness for sin. But when you leave it at just that is not all that Jesus said, and it's not all the message. The principle of sacrificial love and forgiveness is so much bigger than the Christian church. And when they say we got the solution, it has to be done this way, it becomes very painful for me when I see other people who really butt up against the same thing I did.
Yeah.
So I love the church and I love Christians, and there are Christians who I think look and talk and believe and experience some of the things that I do, and when I see it, I'm immediately drawn to them.
Sure.
And you've had some of those people on your podcast.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I end up back where they are at times.
Yeah.
Like the Mosaic Church with James. I love James, but I loved James before.
Yeah. You guys
before
know
I
each
even
other
knew him.
a while, yeah.
Barely knew him, but I knew something about that guy. I loved him. And that's what Jesus said about his disciples. He's like,
You'll know them by their love.
you know him by their love, and that guy over there, I love that guy. And he called him to follow him, and the guy just dropped it and went, So anyway.
You heard about the story with James and my cousin, right?
Yes, and I met your cousin.
Did you?
Yep. Lisa and I went 2-3 weeks ago. James invited us. He was playing bass. That's how James invites people to church, He's like, hey, I'm playing bass up here at this church if you want to come.
Yeah.
So, but we went, really enjoyed it, and saw a couple of people I knew, and thinking about going back tonight at the little later service.
He's coming on next Thursday. My cousin.
Your cousin is,
and I'm
haven't
looking seen
forward.
him in at least probably 14 years.
I cannot wait to hear that and see that podcast.
It'll be natural.
It'll
be like
it's gonna
a
be.
day hadn't.
It's gonna be great. I think that's.
You know this story? So James Gibson, he's a few years older than me. He went to Farmington. I knew a lot of his family. I was friends with him. He's a realtor, Gibson Realty. He's CEO and founder of that, and he sold us all our land out here. Anyway, he's been on the pod a couple times, but we were talking about, I can't remember what the topic was, but he was talking about his pastor, and he said, he actually reminds me of you a little bit. Got red hair, a lot of similarities, and he was talking about this pastor is really interested in kind of researching the languages and reading the Bible in the original languages and really trying to get a translation. And anyway, I said, well, that sounds like an interesting dude. Like, I'd like to talk to him. That sounds like somebody I'd like to talk to. You think he'd do a podcast? He's like, oh, I know he'd do it. His name's Nick Rowland. And I just kind of froze out. It's my cousin that I haven't talked to in 10, 15 years. Just family drama happens, and people go at it, and then I just kind of said, I'm out. I don't want to.
So what's Nick's background?
Well, I mean, I don't know how long he's been at this church, but I mean, he's a theology guy. He wanted
You
to.
said Mosaic?
Fellowship. So Fellowship Bible.
I know Nick. Yeah.
Yeah. You know Nick?
I'm connected with Fellowship. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you know him. Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen Nick. But yeah.
But anyway, so we kind of became casualties in family drama, and just through no animosity or anything. I loved Nick growing up. I mean, he's like 6 or 7 years younger than me, so there's a bit of a gap. But man, we used to, when he first started playing guitar, we used to write and play, and he played football for Gus Malzahn at Shiloh, and I played at Farmington. So we had a lot of common interests, and had a good time growing up together. So I love him to death, and I'm really excited that. But again, it's one of those things. Without this pod, and without having James on, and I wouldn't be reconnecting with him. And I'm so excited to see him.
And then through that, I listened to the podcast with James on here, and I could tell, and I haven't really, it wasn't until the podcast where I listened to both of your episodes with James that I got to know him, even though I had him hired as an agent for my office because it was a real estate
when you were a real estate
office, and James had just gotten his license.
It was back in the late 90s, right?
2001.
Okay.
And he had just gotten his license. I knew who he was, and I think this guy's going to do something big, and I want him in my office. And like a month later, he'd barely gotten started. A month later is when I was arrested, so I had to go to him, and in the best of my ability, just apologize to him and say, "You need to go maybe somewhere else. I'd recommend you go to Larry Robbins. Farmington," which is what he did. But then, while I'm trying to get my life together, James is creating his own real estate company and doing so much more. And becoming even more than I ever imagined, really, that he could. And he's such a humble, quiet, gentle, but forward-thinking man. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, he's baffled me for a while. I couldn't quite get a beat on him, and he came out and played at Durham Fest. He played bass with us on a track, and he's very much a man of faith. Mm-hmm. And I haven't talked about this a lot on the podcast, but I had a very negative experience with the church growing up, and I'm very leery of Christianity, the church. I have nothing against Christianity. It is the people sometimes who are preaching it the loudest are some of the nastiest people I've ever met in my life. And so I've had to reconcile that. But that's not God's fault. That's not the teaching's fault. Those are individuals. And for a long time, I swore off all of it just because, if these people can do this and this isn't of any value, which, I've come through that. But James is one of those people that, I feel like he says it's hard to offend him. He lives a spiritual life. He lives it the way that he believes it should be lived, but he's a very tolerant person. I feel like you're okay to hang out with James, and we're going to try it. He wants to come on one of our group pods at night when we get a little rowdy, so he's going to do that with us, so that'll be fun. But I feel like James he puts his money where his mouth is. I mean, I've known him, quite a while. Not super close with him. We spent a lot of time together here recently, but his heart's in the right place. He's a good dude, and I think he wants to share that with people in any way he can. But I feel like he's genuine in what he.
Yeah, he's a very authentic man.
He is.
Yeah.
But he's a different bird. Like he said, he's not a suit and tie kind of guy.
Yeah.
He's a big metalhead, which is which is wild. And he told some stories about some of the metal bands he listens to and doing some ministry with those guys and stuff. He's got a lot of cool stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just an interesting individual. So.
And he introduced my wife and I came up to the Mosaic a couple of weeks ago, and he made sure that Nick was there for me to meet him, even though Nick wasn't preaching that night. But it's just the kind those kind of connections I really appreciate. I've had those types of things happen a lot in my life. Right people at the right time, and it's all God. As far as I'm concerned, there's a thread of God's grace, goodness, plan, purpose through all of it, and it's a tapestry. When you step back and get away from it and look at it, and you don't focus on just this one thing, you step back and you see this beautiful landscape, this beautiful tapestry, and you find yourself in there, and you're like, oh, look who I'm connected to in here, and I'm in the same tapestry as this person over here who has these different beliefs and who told me that I was wrong, but we're in the same tapestry. We're in the same deal. Yeah. Anyway, but James, I think. James, I think I was right about him, even in my drinking and crazy time. I was right about him, and he probably won't like us talking about him this much. He's too humble for that. But I'm looking forward to meeting and talking with you some more.
Yeah, it'll happen.
We're gonna do it.
I know you gotta split. I know you're going to that service, but in closing, man, they can find the book on Amazon.
Firelight.
Tell us the name again.
So you go to Amazon Books and just look up Firelight Daily Reflections. You don't have to know the rest of it. It'll pop up. It has a fire on the front. It's $22.22. That number is selected very specifically because of my dad, who, interestingly enough, my mom posted on Facebook today. She's 86, and he played for the Razorbacks. He was number 22, and so when we were going through his latter years and his passing, and especially afterwards, the numbers 22 came up all the time, 222 and all that, just constantly for our family. So we've kind of embraced that number 22, cool. and I was like, what does a book like this sell for? Like just standard pricing. Across the board, and it was like from $18 to $30, and I'm like, okay, so in the mid-20s, and I go, why not $22.22? And so that's the price.
That's why.
Yeah, that's the reason for that.
And this is episode 44, so buy two.
Yeah, there you go. So, and I'm honored that you bought one for a friend and yourself.
And one for you, for your fellas.
Oh, you're gonna let me
giving one back to you.
Back to me for the house for the guys.
You inspire.
And then you give it to wherever it goes. Yeah.
So
it's awesome. Thank you for coming on, Brad.
This is a blast. Yeah,
that was awesome.
Are you going down the hill? Are you going down the hill?
No, he's
Are you staying?
No, he's crashing.
He's crashing.
Yeah,
here?
we're gonna hang out.
Okay, so I need to ride back down the hill. You gonna?
I'm gonna take you down. No, actually,
my little van. The van that. Oh, let me tell one thing real quick.
Yeah, please.
So this was not really the plan for us when we opened our men's housing, but I knew the potential need for it. So we're in West Washington County on Highway 62, right?
Okay.
And drug court and doctors' offices and all of that's not in Farmington.
Right.
It's in the middle of Fayetteville.
Right.
Yeah.
But Fayetteville is not real friendly to recovery housing. As a matter of fact, there's ordinances against people living in groups,
Really?
even though it's a college town. Only city in the state.
Get out of here.
No, I'm serious.
That's
serious.
wild.
It is. So, and I've been in Farmington, and I really have a vision for West Washington County, which will be another topic if you'll have
So you're
me
running
back.
for mayor?
No, not that. It's anyway. It's for health and wellness and
Okay.
good things coming out there. But I wanted, when we talked to Lisa and I talked about it, where would we do this? And we're right here in town, and so that's what we've done. We've got our two houses are right in town, and we don't broadcast where they are. Anonymity. We want to be the best neighbor in the neighborhood.
Awesome.
I think we've shocked some of our neighbors.
Good.
In how well it's managed and the men that they meet and see, and they kind of love them, which is pretty cool. We've had to exit some guys. They didn't fit because they went back to using
Sure.
or their attitude wasn't right, and they didn't fit for for an environment. But anyway, someone donated. One of my neighbors donated a 2011 minivan to be used for toting people around, and I've toted furniture and all that, and we spent some money to get it fixed initially, and then we've been using it. Well, now that we have like 13 guys in our two houses, there's a few of them that need rides all the time.
Yeah.
And last week, one of them needed to go to the hospital, needed MRI, needed doctor's appointments, and the van was starting not to start. And so I took it to Ready Lube, which Blake and Heather at Ready Lube in Farmington. There's a little plug for them. They're awesome. They're good to us, and I think they're good people. But I took it to them, and it absolutely would not start. So they called me. They got it, whatever you do to figure out what's wrong with it, and said it's gonna be like $900 and something bucks.
Oof.
And I'm like, oh man, it's a starter, and need new brake pads, and rotate the tires while we're at it. And I'm like, well, we're using it every day. We need it.
Yeah.
And really, we're a very much we're lean budget. We're
Yeah.
not trying to connect with churches and government and get insurance payment, and we just
Right.
want the guys to pay and be self-sustaining, and we take donations, of course. But anyway, that was Friday that they called. $900 something bucks. I get home that night in the mail, and there's a lady in Evansville, Indiana, where Lisa is this weekend because she lived there for 30 years, who's been very supportive of my book when I started first talking about putting it out. And she wanted a copy. I want a copy. I want you to sign a copy. I'm going to send you money to get one, and I want you to sign it and get it to me. So with a really sweet note, she sent the $22.22. But also, as I read the note, she said something about a donation for our housing for the men, and it was a check for $1,000.
Wow.
Which covered that van that day.
No kidding.
Yeah. And, so I got it. The van was ready the next Tuesday, and the money was in the bank, and it felt so good to have that donation from that lady who's not, she was moved by what we're doing. So
That's a powerful.
that was pretty. That was it was a God nod.
It's hard to
it was
argue.
a God nod.
Yeah.
Another
I know
one,
it.
and a gift, really, because without that, we would not. I mean, I could have come up with the money, but
Yeah.
Authenticity is attractive.
yeah, it is. It is.
Very attractive. I think that's what is destroying the chokehold on the world right now is authenticity. I think things are
facades
going
and-
from the mainstream media down to podcasters, and then the bigger podcasters start turning into mainstream media, and people abandon them and go find somebody smaller. If you can catch people before they get big, I think that kind of
When you can still talk to them, and
Right.
they don't have something between who they are and where you are, which in the political world it's media. So if you actually
Yes.
sit down with each of the people that are presently like running, if you sat down with them and had the opportunity to remove all the media message and all the other messaging, I think that you would find their authentic person
Yeah.
is a really good God in the image of God person. And that's our philosophy in our housing.
Yeah.
You come in here, I have a treatment center, drug court, whatever. Here's where we begin. Not original sin. We start with original blessing. You are good. You were created in the image of
You
God.
are a beautiful
You are,
creation.
that's right. And you've gotten away from it. You've been wounded. Let's get you back. Let's help you get back to who that is. And that's
Yeah.
what we do. And I think that's true, though, in the church. I think it's true of the people in the church, the pastors. But unfortunately, there is that messaging, whether it's the media messaging, the church's denominational messaging,
Sure.
what they're supposed to do, their affiliations, and it's in
Our
between us.
society has the taboo sins, right? Yeah. And when those kick in, it's like we've cut you off.
Yeah.
Well, the world loves a scapegoat, and you'll find that. And I was that. So I know that I was, and I still am in some ways. It's the scarlet letter. It is the leper of today. Mm-hmm. If you've committed this crime or this sin, it's worse than murder, what I did. In many cases, I mean, it is seen as that because you're still alive and you're out, and you could do that again. And the fact is that that's true. But you're right, there are taboo things. And I'm okay. I mean, like, one of those verses, God like uses the foolish to confound the wise. It's not about that, but that principle of let me surprise you with who I use to carry this message.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
and that's why I think you are so positioned to inspire so many, not just men, but the women too.
Sure.
Anybody.
Yeah.
women are buying this book and really relating to it.
yeah.
I've gotten more messages from women who are actually
So you're getting
bought it.
feedback already.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, and not like globally, but enough from people that I really respect, who are people who I recognize are well-read, intelligent people who have their thumb on what's kind of like this. As when a couple of people say, it's well written, and I know that it's not fancy well written, but it communicates, which is all I care about. I just want it to relate in an authentic way, like you said, and I hope that it's positioned. I hope that the message is positioned. I also think that with the opportunity, like with Brad and Nicole and others, I mean, I still, the gifting from God of who I am, I had to go through some stuff to be able to be where I am today.
Yeah.
But those gifts are still there, and I recognize that they are.
Heck
And
yeah.
and the ability to communicate. But I really don't. I think my biggest resistance, honestly, is I really don't like. So for somebody to get nourished by God, they need to get to God, not to me, and not to anybody else.
Well,
We're guides along the way. We can help.
Yeah.
We share
Sure.
our stories, but
you as an individual have been one hell of an inspiration to a lot of people. I know Nicole credits you as kind of kicking her ass a little bit into doing her pod. She was the same for me. You're a hell of a dude, man, and I really appreciate you coming on and
Thanks,
talking
Brad.
to us. You've been an inspiration to me, and I've only known you a short time, but man, God bless you
Let's
for what
keep it
you've
rolling.
done.
Let's
We'll
keep it
keep it rolling. I'm proud of you, man. I'm
Thank you,
freaking
Brad.
proud of you. This is so cool, and I really hope that people get help from this. I'm excited to read it. I don't know if I want to. I kind of want to just pound through it, but I want to read it daily.
do that.
too.
My mom did.
Did she?
Bless her heart. Yeah, she's going back through now, reading it as I wrote
Yeah.
it. But she said she read the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm going to read it with a red pen, and I'll send
Please
it back
do.
to you. With
Do. I've asked my, I've
No.
asked, please, find the things that I can keep editing, because it's so easy to
I'm
edit.
messing with you.
But,
You got the other book though you're working on. What are we thinking about for a
have no-
timeline there?
I don't know.
Someday,
I don't know. I really don't.
but you're still working on it actively.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah, getting this done actually frees me up to do that. I think that the nature of it would allow me to blend my story in with what we're doing with housing,
yeah.
and the like today is international overdose awareness day, International Overdose Awareness Day, and the whole intent of it is to bring awareness to drug overdose and death, also to recognize the losses that many people have had as a result of loved ones dying from drug overdose,
Yeah.
and also to help destigmatize what drug overdose really is about and how people get addicted to drugs. There's more people addicted to drugs today and alcohol as a result of trauma or misguided misuse, accidental of prescription medication. Like, for example, so many of the guys that I work with started because they had some attention deficit. They get on Adderall. Adderall works.
Sure.
But then they get inflamed with that, and they shift from that to alcohol, and then all of a sudden they find meth, and it's like, boom,
Right.
locked in.
Like that.
So
That's
many.
Nicole's story.
Yeah, largely.
It worked well as it was supposed to, but in order for it to continue to, and then you blend in a person who's broken, wounded, and has some things that they want to comfort, and that becomes a comfort. All of a sudden, it's a locked in, loaded deal. So it's anyway that kind of thing. I didn't bring it up, other than to say there's a lot more topics that we can continue to talk about.
Oh yeah, I would love for you to come back with your lady and
With Lisa?
and talk
Oh
about your
man,
ministry. Yeah,
that's what Ken.
Would she do that?
Oh, she'd do it. Yeah,
Would
she's
she?
got to schedule it on a weekend when she's.
Yeah, that'd be
she's-
fantastic.
I know she would. Yeah.
What I love what you're doing in that. Partly, it's tearing down some taboos.
Yeah.
Because, not that I'm some kind of misogynist, but I do feel like men have a place to tell stories, and I feel like mental health or depression or sexual abuse or whatever it is has been kind of taboo for men to talk about, and haven't really had a voice to talk about those things, or even books. And so it's really cool, man, that you're doing this, and now it's out. And you've got a copy of it.
It's out, and
that one is
buy
mine.
It, share it. Yeah, this one is
and
yours.
you're going to sign
Yes,
it for
I'm
me
gonna
before
sign
you
it.
get out of
Yeah, I
here,
sure am.
and then we're going to have you back with your wife next time.
That's awesome. It'll be far better with her than me.
And for all the
Oh, I'm
little
sure.
people like me, do what I did: buy one for yourself, and buy one for a buddy.
We're going to find out just how not little you are here pretty soon, I think.
I'm pretty little.
Well, Hal, brother, thank you so much
Let's do
for
this.
coming on again.
All right, stand up, Brad. Give me a hug.
I'll do it, brother. I love you, man. Thank you for doing this.
New Brad.
New bread. Hey, how about a bread
Hey,
sandwich?
big
Have a
old group hug. Let's just do it.
There you go.
Oh, look at this. The first group hug on the pod.
Is that really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. We broke down a lot of
We don't do a lot of
taboos.
hugs
We
on the
broke down
pod.
some real taboos today.
Hal is so pretty.
Same
That was
here.